Welcome everyone to Nano's Indie Cafe, where we discuss and promote various indie games and indie projects. If you have your own indie project, be a game, comic, indie food truck, feel free to stop by sometimes at our live shows and talk about your game and project. And we do our live shows Wednesday, Friday at 3 p.m. But today we're doing the podcast segment, and actually the first podcast that's not being live on Twitch. Today I am joined by one of the devs of REVN. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Silas, the creative director and lead developer at Project Ambitious Games. We're making an indie third-person shooter MOBA called REVN. Thanks for having me on, Nano.
Yeah, so when did you get into gaming? Did you play a lot of games growing up, or did it happen later in life?
I started playing video games, I think, when I was around, 8 or 9 years old. So I started pretty early. I started with RTS games, actually, because that was something that my dad was playing, and so he introduced me into some different RTS games, and that's sort of what I grew up on, was playing RTS games. And then I got a copy of the 2005 Star Wars Battlefront 2. So that was my first shooter game that I played. And I still have my copy from back in 2008, 2007, whenever I got that. And yeah, that's kind of where I got my start in gaming, was RTS games and then Battlefront 2.
So, Battlefront 2, was that your first shooter game?
Yeah, that was my first shooter. That was really my first game that wasn't an RTS game. And I obviously was a huge Star Wars fan as a kid. I nerded out over it so much. And so that was, I think, a really cool place for me to start, because it sort of bridged that gap between movies and then video games, by bringing those together. And then from there, I'm trying to remember what the next game that I really started playing seriously was. It may have been Skyrim. That may have been my next really big game.
What, really?
I kind of went from RTS games to Battlefront 2, and then I started playing a lot of RPGs.
But wouldn't Skyrim been years and years later?
Yeah. So I didn't play a lot of games before I started getting into Skyrim. There was a period of time in between Battlefront 2, when I was playing that, and before I started getting into more single player RPGs, where I wasn't playing games that much. It just didn't really happen, I guess. And then once RPGs like Skyrim and stuff started coming out, I played hundreds of hours of Skyrim, The Witcher 3, some of the other Elder Scrolls games, and that was what I did. That's what I played pretty much all throughout high school and going into college and all of that.
Yeah, I personally don't play as many Western RPGs. Most of the RPGs I play are JRPGs, so your Kingdom Hearts, your Final Fantasy. Even though I've never beaten a Final Fantasy, I played through some of them, but I've never gotten to the credits part of a Final Fantasy game. One day, maybe with this Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really played a JRPG. I've always played Western RPGs. I've seen Final Fantasy. My roommate has played Final Fantasy 15. I've picked up the controller once. So I think someday I'd like to give them a serious try. But I honestly don't have the time to play RPGs right now. I wish I did. After I was sort of going from high school into college, I switched into playing more competitive multiplayer games instead of RPGs, because it was a great way for me to hang out with friends and socialize and meet new people. And I think also at that point I had actually gotten a decent gaming PC, and I had sort of the hardware to compete competitively. And so I felt I wanted to see how far I could go. I'm trash. I'm a horrible competitive player. I do not rank well in any game, but I like trying. I like playing competitive games and being bad at them.
And yet you're making a competitive game.
Yeah, and so here I am. Uh,
So, what do you like about shooters, and what makes a good shooter, in your opinion?
what makes a good shooter to me? Um, that's a good question. I think for me, a good shooter has a lot of competitive integrity. So not feeling like someone else won, is killing you in a way that's just purely random, or there's factors that are outside of your control. I like feeling like the shooter is, it's my skill versus the enemy's skill. It's not about who has been playing longer, who's got a better gun that they randomly found. So for me, like games like the Battlefield games, where the longer you play the game, the more you level up and unlock different guns. I really don't like shooter games like that, where you end up feeling like people who have more experience in the game have access to stuff that you just don't, and then that it sort of ruins the competitive integrity of a shooter for me.
So
I like games where everyone has the same tools to play.
so you like it when it's more skill based.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
based on your own ability, if you can win or not.
Yeah, I mean, I understand like having progression systems. I mean, REVN has progression systems. I play a lot of shooter games that have progression systems. I just think that it's important that the progression systems are not locked behind playing hundreds of hours of the game, or spending a ton of currency. I think it should be very easy to get a specific thing if you want that specific thing because it's meta. If it's the most useful item in the game, it should be very easy to get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So your games have shooter and have mobile, right?
Yeah, yeah. So REVN is we like to call it a third-person shooter MOBA. It is a third-person shooter on a moment-to-moment basis. You are controlling a third-person character. You're shooting at enemies. You've got abilities that are all fast and very action-oriented. But on a bigger level, it is a MOBA because you are upgrading your character. You're buying items. You're leveling up. You are attacking the enemy nexus. You have minion waves, you have towers, you have resource farming, and you have to work with your team in order to win. So, and we've got similar match times, 20 to 40 minutes, as most other MOBAs. So, on a bigger level, it's a MOBA, but on the moment to moment basis, it's going to feel a lot more like playing a shooter.
So to kind of talk more about the mobile aspect, what was the first MOBA you played? How did you get into MOBAs?
So the first MOBA I played was Paragon back in I think like 2016. I started playing it, and I didn't really know that it was a MOBA. I didn't understand like what MOBAs were. It was just this cool game with these weird characters and these abilities, and it was a fun game to play. I wasn't really aware of MOBAs going into it. Like I had heard of League of Legends and heard of Dota, but I'd never played them. I never really watched them. I just knew that they were these really big popular games. And then I started playing Paragon, and I just played it as a game. I didn't really know that there was a larger genre around it until later.
Yeah, so MOBAs tend to have be kind of known for having some toxic communities. What's your viewpoint on the toxicity when it comes to MOBAs, and how can we change that and improve it? You know.
I've definitely seen my fair share of toxicity. After playing Paragon, which I never really had any toxic experiences in Paragon. Um, and then when I started playing League of Legends in high school, playing League of Legends in college. My One of my best friends in college was actually the captain of our collegiate League of Legends team. So I scrimmaged with them a few times. I never actually competed in any of the tournaments, but I would play with them when they needed to practice. And then I just played with him casually. Playing League of Legends, I've seen my fair share of toxicity in that game. So I think it comes from the competitive nature because everyone wants to win, right? Like people who play those games, they're playing to win. They're playing to have fun. But I think the most important thing to them is winning, and it's very easy to blame other people when you don't win or when something doesn't go your way. And it's also really easy for someone to start trash talking the enemy team or saying bad things about them afterwards in the lobby. Uh, and I think it's partially just because of the competitive nature of the games, and it also comes down to how how is the game designed? Is it designed where one player can hold back the entire team if they don't do their role to the highest level? So in games like REVN, what we're doing is we're trying to make it where one player can't ruin the game experience for everyone else on their team. It's still possible. You can still have someone who's trolling. You can have someone who just doesn't know what they're doing. But there are some key things that we're trying to do in the design of the game itself, where one player can't completely hold back the enemy team or hold back their allies if they're not doing something perfectly. So one of the things we do there is we don't have a reward for killing players. We only have a reward for killing players who are on a kill streak. So if you're just dying repeatedly, you're not actually really feeding the enemy team. You're still not like helping your team if you're constantly dying, but you're not feeding the enemy team by dying over and over in REVN. The only way that you end up giving resources to the enemy team by dying is if you yourself are on a kill streak. So it's sort of a bounty system, right? So if you have no kills and you die, enemy player gets nothing. If you've gotten 1 kill, the enemy player is going to get 100 resources. If you've got 2 kills, the enemy player will get 200 resources. So it's more of if you're starting to rack up a kill streak, you've actually got a bounty on your head, and if you die, you risk losing that, giving that resources to the enemy team. So that's something that we're doing that will hopefully discourage people from being toxic to players that are dying all the time, because there isn't really that feeding mechanic that you see in other MOBAs.
That's like I've always compliment like MOBAs for the art and like level designs. I think a lot of the art and level designs of MOBAs are just amazing. It's just I'm not a competitive player. Me bad at games. I died from the tutorial levels in games.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's something that we as developers have to be aware of, is that not everyone's going to be good at our game, and not everyone's going to play our game, because they're not good at it or because they've been frustrated with it. So it's our job to make the game as accessible as possible, but at the same time recognizing that certain players just won't want to play our type of
Yeah,
game.
you can't please like everyone.
Right.
Not every game's for everyone, but I think there is a game for everyone.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I'm trying to think of other things that I would say about toxicity in MOBAs and just in games in general. I think that part of it is just laying the foundation in the beginning in your community. Being really involved like we are. We're constantly on Discord. We play games at least twice a week with all of our players for several hours. Like, we try to stay involved and set an example as developers. Because we play the game with them, we show them like, hey, this is how you should be behaving. And so, right now I'm really proud to say that we have 500 plus something registered players, and none of them are really toxic when we play with them. They know that they see us playing, they see us being positive about the game, they see us being, good sports when we win, good sports when we lose. And I think setting an example as developers is really important. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to play with everyone as the game expands, and as we get hundreds and thousands of more players. We can't meet everyone, we can't play with everyone. So setting an example now will help, but that won't be the only thing we can do. Having report systems in place for the players to report to our support teams that, hey, so-and-so is being abusive in chat, and just taking a strong stance on that is probably going to be really the best thing we could do, and just reacting and making sure that we're controlling situations before they escalate too far.
Yeah, but how do you make sure people don't like abuse that system and like mix stuff up and put things out of proportions?
So how do we make sure people don't abuse the report system?
Yeah, and report someone just because they don't like the said person.
Right. I mean, what you do is you keep logs, right? So you keep logs of chat, so we can record, okay, what did they actually say? And then if you report someone for saying horrible things in chat, we can have our support team go in and read the chat and see if they actually said something. We have a censorship system in place in chat. You can turn it on and off. So if you want to make sure you're not seeing certain words, we can have that enabled, and that helps a little bit. I think that controlling toxicity in this game, unfortunately, we're always going to have some toxic players, and we're going to do everything we can to enforce a certain standard of behavior. And especially with like more what would be the word, more prominent players, like that would be where we really have to be strict about it, is, you know, like trying to set an example in the players who are streaming the game and being public with the game, you know, talking to them about what's acceptable, what's, you know, good behavior. And I think also as our team grows, I really want to add people to the team who are, you know, specifically focused on our community. Right now, our team's pretty
So
small.
like community managers, pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right now, we have a pretty small team. We have 5 core developers and sort of another 4 or 5 collaborators who work on the game with us, which brings our team to around 10 people. And as we grow, I would like to make sure that we have at least 1 or 2 developers whose their job would be to, you know, brainstorm ways that we can improve the community, ways to just monitor the community and talk to them and figure out, you know, other ideas for this. So while I might not have the answers to, you know, what are we going to do when someone's, you know, abusing the report system for griefing, you know, and they're just targeting someone to get them banned, you know, this, I would like to bring in a team of people who are actually like focused on making that their number one priority.
When did you know you wanted to like make games?
Um, I was pretty young. I think I was in middle school. I liked playing games, and then I'm not sure exactly what happened. What the like first time I heard of the idea of making video games, I just sort of was realizing like I was good at math and I was good at like science stuff. And then I heard that, oh, that's how you make video games. It's ones and zeros in math and numbers, and I was like, oh, I can do that. Um, so I took a programming class when I was pretty young, sometime in middle school, and I'm pretty sure that my parents asked me like, "Why do you want to take this class?" And I was like, "I want to make video games," and they're like, "Oh, well, that's okay." They weren't like super excited about the idea of me making games. They're like, "Oh, video games, you know, they're violent and gory, and you know, you sit on your butt at your chair all day. You know, they're not the most healthy thing. Are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, well, I could also use this to make money as a software developer and not make video games. And they're like, okay, you can take the class. But so I did that, and then I took more programming classes just all throughout high school, and I just, you know, just kept taking classes and learning. I think I started with Visual Basic, and then I learned Java.
Hey, that Visual Basic was actually the first language I studied too.
Yeah, yeah, it's an okay place to start. I have never used it outside of that class. I'll tell you right now. Like and in that way, I'm not sure that I would say it's like the best place to start. It was an okay language to learn, but I honestly didn't really understand programming that much. I was just kind of like doing things and it worked, but I didn't really understand it.
I personally, in my opinion, I think like C Sharp is probably the good place to start if you're learning programming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an educator, so I'm not really an expert on where to start. But C Sharp, I did learn C Sharp for a little bit. I think I was like 12 years old, and I discovered the Unity game engine. I think it was Unity like 3.5 back then. And I don't remember where exactly I saw it. No, I do. I was playing Flash games on the internet, right? And a lot of them were made in Unity, so I kept seeing the Unity logo pop up on all these Flash games I was playing, and I was like, "What's Unity? Why is it like on? Why is their brand on all of these games I'm playing?" So I looked it up, and I went to Unity's website, and I was like, "Oh, this is free. I can download this, and I can make games." Um, so I downloaded it, and downloading it probably took like 2 days because the internet, you know, I don't know if you remember, but you know, 10, 15 years ago, the internet was not as fast as it is today. It certainly wasn't where I lived. So it took like all day to download the engine. And I think I opened it up and I had no idea what I was doing. And there was like example projects for like a top-down shooter and a racing game. And I just kind of opened those up and I would just like edit the levels and like take the racetracks and like add more roads to them and stuff. So I was just kind of learning how level editors worked. And I didn't really follow any tutorials for a while. For a couple of years, I would just like mess around with like the level editor, and I didn't understand programming enough to actually like change how the games worked. And then in high school, I started trying to like program things myself. That went very badly. And then at the end of high school, I took a year off before I went to college. So what I did actually was I finished high school a little early, and then I took a year off, and then I went to college. And during that year off, I bought some online classes to learn C++ and Unreal Engine. Like formally, I bought a class. I was like, all right, I'm gonna learn this because I've got some time. I had this year off. I was working part-time, so I had like my first real job where I was making a regular paycheck every week, and I had all this free time. So I decided to build a PC. So I built the gaming PC that I have now that I use for REVN. And then I bought a class for, I don't know, it was like $50 or something. It was on sale. I bought this class, and it started with like, okay, here's how C++ works. Here's how you make a game that runs in command prompt, and it's just a little text-based game. And I did that, and then it moved into Unreal Engine and building like really simple puzzle games and some other stuff. And at that point, I was starting to pick everything up really fast because I had taken some C++ in high school and some Java, and that was translating over really well into the class I was taking. So then I was like, all right, well, I need to know how to make art for this stuff too, because I don't want to just use the art assets that are in the starter packs and stuff. So I bought another class that was a Blender class, and so I started learning how to model and animate. And I just really kind of self-taught myself off of those online classes. They were really helpful to me in getting started. So I always recommend those same classes to new people who ask me how to get started in game dev because they really got me started and taught me pretty much everything I know now that like I was able to then jump off of that and learn my own things that I needed to know how to make.
So you pretty much learn multiple things, and instead of one, typically people pick the programming or they'll pick the art, but you kind of started like learning both.
Yeah, I was taking both classes at the same time, which was a bad idea. I had a lot of free time, but I think I should have like done one course to completion and then the other course to completion. Learning both, it was always hard for me to prioritize. Like, well, do I want to learn art today or do I want to learn like programming? I kind of wish I had just focused on one subject at a time because it was kind of hard to bounce between those two things, and it's still somewhat difficult for me today to switch between like programming and art. I like to do one thing like for the entire day if possible, just because it's sort of like I can focus on, okay, I can think artistically and or I can think mathematically. If I'm thinking about both things at the same time, it gets a little, a little muddy.
Do you have any tips on like learning art? Because I feel like that's the one like aspect that like game devs have learning. Because with program, there's a lot of like tools to make games without doing programming, but like art, not as much.
So I guess I would say for learning art, take a class. Like that's the first thing I would say. Take a class and learn. You have to learn two things to get good at art, in my opinion. You have to learn technique. You have to learn how to actually make something. You have to learn in Blender, okay, how do I make a cube? How do I turn that cube into a chair, right? But you also have to learn the theory behind art, which is something that is less important in programming. In programming, a lot of it is technique, and there is theory to it, but the theory is something that you sort of learn over time. Whereas with art, if you don't have like good art theory, your stuff does not look good, right? I think so. I would say with art, theory is more important than technique to get your results very quickly. Whereas in programming, you can kind of you can write bad code, but it still works, and no one will know that your code is bad. This is like that's sort of the way it is. Like programming, you can get results very quickly with very bad code. With art, though, your theory has to be good. You have to like have things that follow certain rules to art, right? So I didn't really take any art theory stuff. I was just learning technique in the beginning, and then after my year off, I was going into college, and I had to decide what I wanted to major in. I had to decide between majoring in computer science, aka programming, or majoring in art, because I wanted to do both. And it was a really hard choice, and I changed my mind 3 times in the month leading up to my first class. And every time I changed my mind, I would call the office at the university. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm an art major now." and they'd change all my stuff over, and then I'd call them the next week and be like, hey, I want to code now. I couldn't make up my mind, but I finally decided to start with art. And the reason I chose to start with art was I felt pretty confident in programming. Like I was like, I can teach myself how to code. I'm decent at it already. I have no idea how to do art, so I should learn that.
Yeah, I feel like the programming is the easier thing to like self teach versus art.
Yeah, art is also a lot more practice and getting feedback. Like with code, you can write something and you know what it's supposed to do, and you can test it yourself. And, you know, if you want to write, let's say for example, a soccer game, right? And the game requires you to have a character run up and kick a ball, and the ball needs to move. You can write the code and then play the game and figure out if it does what it's supposed to do. But if you're an artist and you're trying to, let's say, make the soccer player, right? You might make it, but then you have to like get feedback on what did you do wrong? Like, why does the character not look right? Are the proportions correct? Are the textures good? You know, and you can develop a sense for that yourself. You can develop your eye for art, and you can look at it and tell when something's wrong. But sometimes just like knowing whether something is wrong and knowing what's wrong are two very different things. Like you can look at something like that's bad, but can you tell, you know, like an actual artist can tell you what's wrong with it, you know, what parts of the proportions are off and how to fix it. And that's something you just sort of get with practice, with doing art over and over and over again. Whereas with programming, like you can do it once and it works and you're like, okay, this is perfect. Art is a lot more of a learning process and there's a lot more repetition. So those are some of my advice to people who want to learn how to do art for games, any art, is you have to start small and you have to be prepared to do the same thing over and over and over again, making very small, progress steps towards doing bigger things that are more complicated.
Or do you think it's just better for like a developer to just like hire on an artist?
No, if you want to learn art. Like just be prepared to start small.
But
But
what if
I think it's really cool for someone to learn both.
but what if what if you don't really have a passion like necessarily like to be an artist? You're just doing art so you can like make the game.
If you're just doing art to make your game, I think you have to think about what kind of game are you making and what's important to it. Are you making a game that the art matters? Is the art like a driving force of the game's design pillars? So when you're designing a game before you start making it, you should make a document and write down this is the type of game it's going to be. Is it going? What types of perspectives is it going to be played in? What are the players doing? And what are the players not doing? Having a no list, a list of things that you're not going to do in your game because they'll take too much time or they don't fit the theme, that's also important. So I think when you're at that design stage, you should be sort of deciding, is our game going to be driven by mechanics? Is it going to be driven by story? Is it going to be just driven by, beautiful art and beautiful world and characters? And if you decide that having a beautiful or just impressive art style is important, obviously you need to learn art or you need to bring on an artist to do that for you. But it is also possible to make games that have very minimalistic art or very simple art that still function really well. And in that case, you might be able to learn it yourself. For example, and I was not a developer on Superhot, but I think that's like the first game that comes to mind for me. Is like it has a very minimalistic art style and great mechanics. And I personally love their art style. It's like red, black, and white. You got three colors. It's all like low poly. It's all very reflective. It's very unique. And like I feel like one developer who's programming that could make a game in that sort of similar art style where they make some very strict choices about what kind of art they're going to make because they're focusing more on gameplay mechanics.
I mean, personally, I want to like I guess like learn art, but I wouldn't say it'd be my like number one passion. It'd be like more means to end, so I can tell the stories and create the things I want.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's very specific to every project. Like you have to sort of look at it in the perspective in the reference frame of what are you making. Like every game is unique and every game has its own priorities.
So did you want to give a general overview of like REVN for people who may not be that familiar with the game?
Sure. So REVN, like we said earlier, it's a third-person shooter MOBA. It's been in development for about 3 years now. I started it right as I was going into college, like we're talking about. I was like taking those classes and learning about how to make games. And then when I was done with those classes, I was like just starting my college courses. Um, and okay, I'm kind of getting the timeline mixed up here. I finished the online classes, and I decided that I wanted to make an RPG because, like I said at the time, I was playing a lot of RPGs. Uh, and we went way overboard with the design on this RPG. It was me and some of my other friends from high school who were all going into college, and we decided to make an RPG together. We started designing all kinds of crazy stuff that was going to be in it, and we got about 4 to 6 months into development before we realized that we were in over our heads. And so we scrapped it, and we basically took the multiplayer mode from that RPG and decided to make it into REVN. So we were making an RPG, but we also wanted to make a multiplayer like PvP mode for it. So we took sort of the core ideas of that game and then boiled it down into a game design document of like 2 pages. That was a very simple premise. It was you and a team of players against another team of players. You're going to build a base. You're going to attack the enemy base, and whoever destroys the enemy base first wins. That was the game, right? So we boiled it down to that, and we started from scratch. And within 6 months, we had the game prototype, and that was just as I was finishing up my first semester of college. So we had a working prototype for the game. We had multiplayer. You could build the bases. You could shoot guns. You could kill each other. You could walk around, all that stuff. And we had that up and running about 6 months, and then we went from that into just figuring out exactly what type of game it was and adding more features and prototypes, so adding different abilities. We didn't even have abilities at that point, so we started adding abilities. We started adding the items you could buy. We started adding AI. We started experimenting with level design, and it took us up until the start of the next fall semester. So it took us, about a whole year to go from that into a game that we were comfortable showing the public, a game that was in closed alpha, as we called it. So we went from 6 months of prototyping to 8 months of building up to a closed alpha. And then we released that in October of 2018. And at the very beginning, it was very basic. You had a shooting range where you could practice with the different guns against dummy targets. And that was it. We just opened that up, and we let people come in and try it out and tell us how the guns felt, how the movement felt. And we went from there. We started tweaking the movement. It was really slow in the beginning. Your characters took forever to start sprinting from walking. There's all kinds of things that were problematic with it. And we spent a couple months polishing that. And then we started adding more of a larger map and more abilities. And then in the spring, we sort of realized we had a MOBA on our hands. We didn't really set out to make a MOBA. We set out to make a third-person shooter. And then at a certain point, we realized that it was becoming a MOBA because of all of the abilities and the level ups and the minions and the way the map was structured. And at that point, we realized exactly what type of game it was going to be. So we were able to really fine tune the game's design and cut out things that didn't make sense and add the stuff that was required to make it into a functioning MOBA.
What made you combine the 2 elements instead of just picking, shooter or picking MOBA?
Well, I guess there was a couple of things. We realized that there wasn't a game like this on the market. We realized there was no other game where you had really fast-paced action, but also the really amazing meta and teamwork of a MOBA. There's plenty of shooters out there. There's plenty of third-person shooters and first-person shooters, but you don't really have that strong sense of leveling up your character and working with your team that you do in a MOBA. And that sort of larger sense of map control and defending your side of the map while also attacking the other side of the map. There's not a lot of games like that. And none of them did it with the exact rule set of a MOBA. And we also didn't want to just make a MOBA because there's 2 or 3 very large MOBAs in the market that sort of have all the oxygen in the room, and they're all top down in style. And we didn't really think that you have to have a top down game to be a MOBA.
So by combining the 2 genres, would there any challenges that
there have been tons of challenges.
Well, that would cause by smashing 2 different genres together?
there have been so many challenges trying to make both genres work together. It hasn't been completely easy, but it hasn't been impossible either. I guess the other thing that I should mention is that it was, I believe, what would that have been? Spring 2019 is when Paragon was shutting down, I believe. Um, and, yeah, yeah. Paragon was a third-person MOBA that was made by Epic Games, and so I'm going to double check when they shut down. So it shut down in April 2018. Okay, so that would have been before we went into closed alpha, but that was when we were working on all of our prototypes for the game leading up into closed alpha. So at that point, we saw that Paragon was shutting down, and we realized that there was a really great opportunity for us because we were already like a year or so into development. You know, we were 14 months into development. Paragon was getting shut down. We had a game that was kind of working, and we realized we were going in the direction of a MOBA, and that there weren't really any other third-person MOBAs on the market. So we wanted to sort of like fill that gap because I enjoyed playing Paragon, and it was kind of sad to see it go away. But we were also making a shooter, so we were going to be doing something completely different. We weren't just going to be making a third-person MOBA. So you asked about the challenges in making a game that combines both genres, and I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is the combat, because we want the combat to feel like third-person shooter combat. We're not making MOBA combat. And one of the things that I always like feel with that is that in MOBAs you have very specific ranges that you fight at. You don't really fight beyond like 25 to 50 meters with any of your abilities. All of your basic attacks always have a really limited range. Even characters with a bow or a sniper rifle in other MOBAs, you know, you can't really shoot that far with them. And we wanted to do something completely different. You know, we're like, no, you have a sniper rifle and they're 200 meters away. You can shoot them. You know, we want our guns to feel like shooter weapons, not like MOBA weapons. So that was really important to us from the start, but that also presented a lot of unique challenges because you have to. It makes the entire way that the map plays and the way combat goes very different from other MOBAs.
Yeah.
Oh. I was just gonna say it also adds a lot of verticality to the game because you're able to aim up and down and go on top of buildings, and that also completely changes how the game plays because you're thinking moment to moment. You're thinking like a shooter player, right? You're thinking, okay, is there someone up in that building? Are they going to be down there? Where am I aiming? And it's so much different than traditional MOBA combat because in MOBA combat, I feel like it's a lot of like locking on mentally to like one target and then just sort of playing the back and forth of how far away are they from me, so that you try and keep out of range of their attacks. In REVN, if they can see you, they can shoot you. You know. So I think it makes the combat a lot more fast paced. Our time to kill is. I haven't really compared our time to kill recently to MOBAs, but I think our time to kill is a lot closer to a shooter than it is a MOBA. It's a little more fast paced, but it's not as fast paced as like a game like Rainbow Six Siege where you can headshot someone once and they go down. That has also been important to us, is to provide the sort of reactionary combat that you have in a MOBA where someone pokes you and you're able to poke them back or fall or retreat and get out of the way. That's important that we retain that back and forth. I've said this dozens of times during our design meetings. I never want to see an ability or an item that just one-shots someone from full health if they're both at the same power level. There shouldn't be any way to just kill someone instantly without them having any way to react to you or do something about it.
Yeah, so I know your game's made in the Unreal Engine. Why did you go with the Unreal Engine? Because you also mentioned you have experimented with Unity too.
So we went with Unreal Engine for a couple of reasons. The first was we were already learning it for that RPG that we were making. So we already had some experience with it from that. The multiplayer support is phenomenal in Unreal. It's straight out of the box. You do like one thing and you've got multiplayer working in your game. Yeah, it's so easy to make multiplayer games in Unreal. I mean, you can make a fresh project, you can make a blank project in Unreal and click play with 2 players and it works. Like you can play with 2 players right out of the box with Unreal. And I don't have enough experience with Unity to really say how theirs works. But Unreal is designed like from the ground up to support multiplayer, and I think that's probably because it's based off of Unreal Tournament, which was a multiplayer shooter. So
what about online multiplayer? Is online multiplayer difficult to get?
Difficult to get it up and running? No, it's very easy to get multiplayer up and running in Unreal Engine. That was like that was why we chose it. It was like, okay, we want to do a multiplayer game. This is really easy to get it running. There's plenty of work that needs to be done for optimizing and making it, smoother and more reliable and all that stuff. But like getting it just running out of the box is very easy. The other reasons we went with Unreal are their pricing. So it's free to download it, it's free to make your game in it, and then you pay a small royalty fee when you publish your game once you start making a certain amount of revenue. And that's really appetizing to us as a small developer, to know that we're able to invest our money right now into the things that matter to us, investing our money into paying our developers and buying hardware and things like that, instead of having to pay for software.
Yeah, I think the Unreal Engine has really been kicking in popularity in recent years, since they went free.
Right. So having a free model is really nice. The other thing that's really nice for them is they have they've open sourced their code, right? So their code, the entire source code for Unreal Engine is on GitHub. You can download it, you can modify it. So like all of the source code for the engine itself can be modified by us as developers really easily, which is also really exciting for us, because I'm a huge fan of open source software. I love Blender, I love Linux. I use GIMP instead of Photoshop. Like, we have all of this open source software that we use for everything else, and knowing that our game engine is also open source just fits really well into that ecosystem.
Yeah, because years ago, Unreal actually, if I remember correctly, it wasn't always free.
Yeah, no, it used to be closed source a few years ago. I think they went open source in 2014, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that's when they went. They opened up their source code on GitHub.
So I know that you stream game development. When into the game's development did you decide, hey, maybe it's a good idea if we stream the development?
That's a good question. I think I started streaming on YouTube before Twitch, if I remember correctly, and those did not go very well. I don't think anyone watched those, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I think I started streaming mostly because I just realized I could, and I was like, oh, this is a thing that I can do. I've got a webcam and a microphone, well, I didn't have a microphone at the time. I had a really old webcam. It's actually right here. This was my original webcam, was this little 720p one. And I bought it just because it had a camera capability and a mic. I think I mostly bought it just to have a mic for my desktop to talk to friends.
Hey, your first videos was on as bad as mine. I remember, because I didn't get a chance to talk. So the shooters I enjoyed was Halo 3. Okay, it's what got me into online gaming. I probably wouldn't be sitting here if I never got into Halo 3. So how old was I? I was in my early teens, so I was like, hey, let's make some cool Halo YouTube videos. But as a kid, being that young, you don't have access to stuff. So
yeah,
to make the videos, and instead of having a capture card, I used the Xbox Live Vision camera and
were you recording with the camera of your screen? Oh my god!
Had it facing my
Wow. I mean, hey, you got to get started somewhere. I'm trying to remember why I started streaming game development specifically. It was mostly just sort of realizing that I could, and feeling, and I didn't really see a lot of other people doing it back in 2017 when I started doing it. I was like, I don't really see other people doing this, so maybe I can do something new.
Kindred wasn't doing it at that point.
I don't remember I don't know when Kindred started streaming.
I could sworn he's been doing it 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
he may have been streaming back when I started. Actually, I know for a fact that he was, because I watched some of his streams when I was starting on Twitch. But there weren't a lot of people. Even now, if you go and you look in the Unreal Engine category, or you search for game dev streams on Twitch, there's not a lot of them.
Yeah, and Twitch hasn't made it easy since they got rid of the game development directory. There actually used to be an actual directory for game development. Now there isn't. It's just science and technologies.
Yeah, Yeah, so it was sort of realizing that there was there was just sort of a gap there and no one was really doing it. And it also gave me a way to talk to people while I worked. I'm a very extroverted person. I'm a very social person. So I like being around people and talking to them. And game dev is a very sort of, it's a very isolated industry. It's a very isolated career thing to do. You sit at your desk and you work on a game and it's just sort of you and your computer. You don't really get to interact with other people while you're programming or doing art. So streaming was a way for me to socialize while I worked on things. It was a way for me to meet people or talk about what I was doing. I like to talk out loud as I solve problems. If there's someone listening, so that just made it easier for me to work and sort of just keep my mental health intact almost.
So what are some of the pros and cons of like streaming game dev?
Um, well, I would say some of the biggest pros from it have been just building a community around the game. Most of the people who play the game now have come from watching me stream it. Like that was where a lot of our players came from, was people just checking it out. They're like, oh, this is what he's making. You can see all the work that's going into it. You know what's going to be coming out for the game. So it's been really good for having people know about the game. It's been um, some of the cons around it have been in the early stages wondering like, is somebody going to steal my code because I'm just putting it out here on the internet? That was something that was I was worried about in the beginning. I was like, if I'm going to just stream this code while I'm putting it up on screen, are people going to like copy it and then my game won't be unique? And I very quickly learned that that was not the case. It's really hard to follow along with someone who's like streaming live because you can't like really pause and rewind and follow along quickly. So that's hard to do. And also, once your project is so big, no one can actually see all of the code on screen to figure out what's going on. They're only really seeing whatever like small window you're working on, and they don't really get to see all the bigger pictures. It's never really possible
Yeah,
for someone to
and
replicate your code.
your code may not necessarily like mesh with the game they're trying to make.
Right. So I think it's really cool to watch people stream games because you get to learn about like how to do very specific things. You get to learn about whatever they're doing. But you never really have to worry about someone just like stealing your entire game, all of the code from a stream. That was something I learned that I was originally worried about. Some of the other cons have just been like it's work. You have to put some time into it, especially if you want to have a good presentation for your game, a good public face for it. So that's something that I would tell people if you're thinking about getting into game dev and you're thinking about streaming it. Just be aware that whatever you put out there is like that's going to be what people see from your game. So don't be afraid of that. Just be aware of that. Know that your first streams are going to probably suck. They're going to be, your audio quality is going to be messed up. You're going to have, your overlays will get in the way. Something will go wrong. Be prepared for that. Don't be afraid of it. Just be prepared for a lot of trial and error and figuring out like what's going to work for your stream, what's not going to work, what days of the week people want to watch you, what time. I've always wished that I could like do afternoon streams and people would watch them. That doesn't usually happen. It usually tends to be lately. It's been really late streams where it's like past my bedtime, but that's when people want to watch me, right? So I'll stream later than I would like, just because that's when people are interested in seeing what I'm doing. And I'm really lucky right now that I'm got a very flexible schedule and I can sleep in and adjust for that. But just sort of be aware that people might not be watching you just because it's a bad time of the day or a bad day of the week. And just keep at it if you really want to do it, and also listen to feedback. Like if people are like, "Hey, your stream has bad audio quality, or your lighting sucks, or you need to talk more." Like listen to what people have to say, and don't listen to the people who hate what you're doing, because you're also gonna have people who will say things like "that's dumb" or "you're just cloning this other game." You got to have a bit of a thick skin to get on Twitch and stream.
Yeah. Do you always do you ever worry that the viewer base might try and get too involved into the development of a game since you are trying the hey, implement that feature. Ooh, can I do off for you and stuff?
That definitely happens. People do suggest things. They're like, "Hey, can you add a different game mode to the game? When is the next map coming out?" Like people will suggest things, and that's a double-edged sword because sometimes they suggest really awesome ideas to the game. And I wish I could thank everyone in the credits for all of the ideas they've suggested, but I don't know everyone. Like just people who come into the stream, they suggest things. and we're able to implement them. Or they see me struggling with something and they're like, hey, I've done that before. Here's how you do it. So that's the awesome part of that. The less awesome part is when people ask you to do things that you don't want to do, that you know won't work for your game. I've had people who asked us to make the game into a first-person shooter instead of a third-person shooter, and we had to say no because that just takes. We just didn't have the time to do the animations for that. We're like, well, we can't do that. Or we've had people who just didn't like certain parts of the game and they ask you to change it, and you have to say no. So that's where that design document that I mentioned earlier is really important. Having a clear list of what your game is, what it isn't, so that you know what it is, and then you can explain that to other people when they are making suggestions to you.
Yeah, because that's why if I ever make a game, I probably wouldn't stream it or announce it until I'm like, maybe 60 or 70% done with it, because I'm afraid of like viewer-based, fan-based getting too involved. Be like, do that. Oh, can I do that for you? Can I do this for you? And they get like too involved, and it can create burnout. And I've seen it happen with other content creators.
Yeah, you gotta kind of just know when are you comfortable streaming it? When are you comfortable showing it to people? And when are you ready to say no? When are you going to be confident in your design of your game? For us, like I was streaming the development leading all the way up to TwitchCon of 2019, but we didn't let other people stream it. Like we had players playing it for an entire year, and we told them, hey, we just want you to play it. We don't want you to stream it or create videos about it because the art does not look good, right? We had tons of placeholder art, tons of placeholder UI. It was all really bad. It was just there to make the game work on a mechanical level. And we're like, we're not ready for you guys to show this off because, we're not ready for feedback about the art being bad. We're not ready for feedback about all the bugs that we're still working on. And then TwitchCon was coming up, and we're like, okay, we're ready to show this off. We're ready to have people see the game and tell us what they think about it. And I think it's really interesting. You said that like 60 to 70% number that's something that I say a lot with certain features that we're rolling out. I'll say, this is 60 or 70, 80% done, and people will realize that the 70% that's done, that's what the game should look like. And the other 30%, they can recognize that that's the placeholder stuff, that's the stuff that's still being worked on. And that's a really good place to be at if you're going to start streaming or sharing your game, is you want people to be able to look at your game and recognize what's finished and what's not finished. If you show it too early, they'll be able to look at it. When they look at it, they won't know what's finished and what's not finished. They won't know what you intended. So I think a good metric for sharing your game is, will it stand on its own? People will be able to understand, what's good, what's intended, and what's, just there to fill a gap until it's finished.
Yeah, because I also want to prevent like game delays. Because I know people give like Square Enix a lot of crap for stuff, but what I think that they are like really good at is they won't announce a release date until they're like pretty sure that that's gonna be the release date.
Yeah, release dates are a funny thing. I remember I told one of my friends in high school that I would have the game finished and shipped by like summer of 2018. That was optimistic. I mean, the game was prototyped right within 6 months. I was like, oh wow, we made all this progress. It'll just be like another 6 months and we can have it out there. Yeah, that was 2 years ago. I still got the design document. I got the roadmap we wrote of like when we were going to be hitting things. We thought we would have, we thought we would have things done within a month. That ended up taking 3 months. But we learned, and we began to set more realistic roadmaps, more realistic deadlines. And now I think we're in a pretty good place because we've been doing this for so long. We actually know what can we deliver on within a specific amount of time. It also helps having a bigger team now to work on it. We now have there's 2 programmers, myself and our junior dev Lucio. We have a graphic designer. We have a new audio developer. We have 2 artists. So like we have a pretty good sized team now, so we can actually talk amongst ourselves and figure out, okay, how fast can you do this? How fast can I do this? Where does that put us?
So you mentioned before you you guys actually went to TwitchCon. How did that happen, and how was that experience like?
TwitchCon was amazing. It was the highlight of 2019 for me. So we got to go to San Diego for like 3 or 4 days. The decision to go there was basically, like I said, we knew that the game was ready to show off, and we wanted to get more players playing it because, we no longer were trying to figure out, did the guns feel good? It was time to figure out, is our netcode bad? What is the meta for the game? We need to figure out which guns are strong. In order to like figure out what the balance of the game should be, you have to have full teams of players, 5v5, playing it, and you have to have a lot of people giving you their feedback and trying different things with different skill levels and all of that stuff. So we decided TwitchCon was the best opportunity for us to go and share the game with people. Partially because of my own familiarity with the platform as a Twitch streamer at the time. I was an affiliate for a year. I was streaming pretty regular. So I knew how the platform worked. I knew the audience. I could talk to the other streamers as an equal, instead of going into someone who maybe like YouTube, where like I don't edit videos. I do now, but I didn't edit videos at the time. So like I wouldn't know how their job worked. It would be harder for me to talk to them. So going into TwitchCon, it was all right. We know streamers. We know how streaming on Twitch works. And our game is a streamable type of game. It's the type of game where you're playing against other people. It's competitive. So people want to watch you if you're really good at the game, right? So they can learn from you. So that's sort of the approach we brought it there. It was like, hey, get involved with us, figure out about this game, learn about it, and then you can start sharing it with your audience and get them excited about it. We got to meet a lot of really cool streamers there. A lot of them now still play the game with us. We met our audio developer there. We met a lot of people that we were able to connect with afterwards and maintain and build a relationship with, which has been amazing.
Yeah, I've actually never been to TwitchCon. I don't know if it's something I would go to, maybe at least once, but
Yeah, I definitely want to go again this year. I'm hoping it doesn't get canceled. As long as it doesn't get canceled, we'll be there.
I
This year,
mean, when is it supposed to be?
September, end of September.
I don't know. Anime Expo got canceled.
When's that?
July.
Mm.
Some I'm and that's only like a couple months difference. Like I'm not gonna be surprised if like if GDC gets canceled again.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting TwitchCon to get canceled, which would be really sad. But I also totally understand if it happens.
Hopefully, cons will come back next year. Hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
So to kind of talk about marketing, what's your marketing strategy like?
Our marketing strategy is just being online, really, like just being here for the players, being super active to the things they have to say, replying quickly, and sharing as much information as we can about what we're doing. So some of the things that we've been doing that have been really successful have been our monthly developer blogs. Sometimes they happen more than once a month. Sometimes they happen every like month and a half. But we have a dev blog series that we've been running on our website. We've got like 37 of them up by now, where I write about what we're doing, what we're going to be working on, or talking about the stuff we're learning. So that's been really good for us. It shows that we're serious about this, and it shows what we're thinking about. The other thing that's been really powerful for us as a marketing tactic, I guess, has been our weekly patches. It's not really a marketing thing; it's more of a community thing. It's having that really fast response time to our players. We release a patch for the game every week on Monday, and we've been doing that for like 87 weeks now. And we publish those patch notes on our website, so players can go back and they can see we've been working on it for this long, and this is everything we've done to the game. Every single change, every item that we've added, every bug we fixed, it's all there. And so we're trying to just be as transparent as possible that this is what we're working on, and this is the feedback we're hearing from people.
Yeah. So I've seen you on Twitter a lot. So what's your Twitter strategy specifically?
My Twitter strategy.
How do you interact on Twitter?
Well, I'm myself on Twitter. Like I go on Twitter and I say what's on my mind. It's usually pretty dumb stuff about like TV shows and coffee and motorcycles, because those are like the three things I do outside of video games. So like my own personal Twitter is it's me rambling about whatever I'm thinking about, and then just talking to people and having a good laugh and being, you know, and seeing what they're doing and supporting them. Our professional Twitters for the game, basically we post whenever something's going on. We, you know, it's okay, here's the patch notes for the new update. Here are our big milestones. Here's some concept art that we've got for things. It's just kind of sharing the journey of this is what's happening, what's being worked on. And it's been working so far. We don't really do a lot of actually, we don't do any paid advertisement yet. We'll probably start doing that eventually and start like pushing out our reveal trailer and things like that to bring it to new audiences that might not organically discover us. But so far, we've just purely focused on forming an organic community of people who are finding out about the game from other people who are already passionate about it.
Yeah, because we've interacted on Twitter quite a bit. That's where most of our interactions have come through my game dev questions of the day, which hopefully I can bring back. But
yeah, I missed those. Those were fun.
Well, I run out of questions, man. There's only and I feel weird repeating questions until time passes, you know. So it's hard to come up with questions. But
hopefully those come back soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm gonna work on my like social media strategy, but it's hard now since I'm doing YouTube now. I gotta edit the videos, gotta edit the podcast. I also have the website now.
Yeah, there's a lot. I guess the other thing I would say about marketing and social media is it's never too early to start thinking about it and start working on it, because before you know it, that's all you're going to be doing. I used to, you know, not do any marketing stuff, and then I realized we weren't doing anything. So I started blocking out my week. I said, okay, Monday is for marketing. I chose it because they both start with M. It was really easy. I was like, okay, Monday is for marketing. On Monday, I will only do marketing unless I'm all caught up, right? And then I'll go do other stuff, programming. And recently, I've also set aside Tuesday as my day to work on art. I've set aside Sunday as my day to work on optimizing the game and getting better frame rates for our players. So I'm sort of just starting to block out certain days to make sure that we always are fixing and just making progress in every category of game development, and so that nothing gets left behind. So that was the first thing I did, was saying, okay, Mondays for marketing. That was the first day I set aside for any specific thing, and I would just, you know, I would update our Twitter page. I would write the blog. I would work on logos and other graphic stuff. So just set aside time for yourself and force yourself to work on it. Keep track of everything that needs to be done, and get ahead while you can, because I'm going to tell you right now, we launched this Indiegogo campaign 10 days ago, and I don't feel like I get to do anything other than marketing now. Like, I feel like there is an endless amount of marketing and community stuff for me to do. And I have to actually like put my phone down while there's still unread Twitter notifications. I have to close my laptop from emails so that I can fix bugs the players are telling us about, and then go back to the marketing stuff when that's all done, because there's just always going to be more and more of it that's piling up. So get ahead while you can, because I also have things that I want to do. I have a bunch of notes on my desk right now for ways that we should be updating our website, and sort of improving the layout, adding more videos and trailers to it. And videos are things that I need to write scripts for and record and edit. So try and get ahead while you can, before it just swamps you like it is right now for me.
Yeah, it's especially hard since I'm pretty much like a one-man team. The only thing I don't do myself are the thumbnails.
Okay.
And then cards. That's the only thing. But I do everything else. I write the videos. I film it. I edit. So I was browsing through your Twitter last night, and I saw that you posted something about Code 8.
Oh yeah. So I watched that last night. It was an interesting movie. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel that satisfied with the ending. The ending was kind of but it was a fun movie.
I haven't gotten a chance to watch it. All I know is it's like made by Steven and like Robbie Amell.
Yeah, they had good performances. My only comment on that was I don't think Steven can look angry, and like his character was supposed to be kind of like I feel like his character is supposed to be sort of like a dark, like angry criminal type, but also a mentor to Robbie's character. And he did a good job portraying that. But I've just seen him so much in Arrow that like he can't look like angry to me. He's always so friendly to me. Like he's always like this like calm, this just calming mentor figure. And
Are you?
it was just really
Have
weird
we
to see that.
have we been watching the same Arrow show?
I
Because
haven't watched some of the new. I haven't watched the most recent couple of seasons, but he always like he can be sort of a dark character at times, but he also has this sort of like, you know, everything's going to be okay. We'll control. We'll take care of it. You know, and he just always has this sort of like friendliness to him. That I don't know. It was just so weird to see him in a different character. I've never seen him in anything else outside of Arrow, so seeing him in a new role was
he was also
a shock.
He was also Casey Jones in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sequel.
Okay, yeah, I did not see that.
Yeah, and Robbie also played in Flash.
Okay.
He was the original Firestone.
Oh, that's where I've seen him. Yeah. I knew he looked familiar.
And I believe he was. Was that other CW show Tomorrow People or something like that? I think he was in that too.
Okay.
So have you kept up? Have you seen the Arrow finale? Because
I have not.
Because it's ended.
Yeah, I know it's over. I think I'm on season 6, so I've got like 2.5 more seasons to watch.
I kind of skipped a couple seasons and went to the final season.
Yeah, I might end up doing that. It was season 6 I've kind of stopped watching it at this point.
Yeah.
I will go back to it, but it's not a high priority right now.
If ending, you should at least watch the crossover Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you haven't seen that,
I have not seen that yet. People said it's really good. One of my best friends from high school and we both watched Arrow around the same time, and then I stopped, and he went and kept watching, and he's been like, "Man, you gotta watch the crossovers. They're really good."
Yeah.
So I'll get to them someday.
They have a lot of good like cameos from other DC properties and stuff. So
okay, yeah.
So what made you do Indiegogo versus Kickstarter?
Yeah, so Indiegogo, we went with it pretty much because of the flexible funding plan. That was the main reason we went with it. They both have the same fee structure. They both have pretty much the same format for creating a campaign. But Indiegogo lets us do a flexible funding whereas Kickstarter is all or nothing only. Indiegogo lets you do either or. So with all or nothing on Kickstarter, you either raise $5,000 or more and you get the money from your backers, or you don't, and then all the money is refunded to your backers. Whereas with Indiegogo, the purchases that our players are making and our donors are making, those are going to us, regardless of whether or not we reach our goal. And that's important to us because we're going to make this game, regardless of whether or not we reach our goal. The game is already done. We're already in closed alpha. The game is fully playable. The art needs more work. The sound effects need to be added. We need to improve our netcode so that there's less input lag and things like that. But all the gameplay mechanics are there. We have like 25 to 30 abilities and another like 30 items in the game. You know, the game is finished. It's fully playable, and it's starting to become kind of competitive. So the Indiegogo, that is basically us raising money to take it from closed alpha into open beta, where we can add dedicated servers, which will vastly improve the stability of the matches. Players will have so much less lag. We'll be able to rewrite all of our netcode because we'll have money to pay our developers more hours to work on the netcode. So we're really just kind of taking it from that like prototype stage where it's fully playable and it's pretty fun and competitive, and taking it into a stable experience where you're not going to be raging at the server for, you know, kicking you or lagging and things like that. And if we don't raise $5,000, we'll still be able to put that money towards servers. We just might not be able to get the servers up and running quite as fast. With $5,000 or more, we're hoping that we can have open beta dedicated servers by the end of the summer. If we don't raise that money, then in that scenario, we would still be adding dedicated servers. It just might take us another month or two to put the time into testing them and making sure they're ready to roll out. Or it might mean that the servers roll out and they have limited availability because we can't afford to run them 24/7. It might turn into, we have open beta dedicated servers available on the weekend, but not Monday through Friday, something like that.
So was the Indiegogo, did they take a lot of planning?
Yeah, we spent at least 2 months planning the page. I think we started at the beginning of the year, like in January. We decided that we were ready to do Indiegogo or any kind of crowdfunding. We were like, okay, it's time to do this. So we started planning it. We started writing all the stuff that goes on there, creating the graphics. Recording the trailer took probably 2 months. Doing the script for the trailer, working with Haven Kendrick, who's the voiceover.
Oh, I love that voice. Oh,
he did an amazing job. And he's actually going to be joining our team as our sound effect producer and doing all of the other sounds and audio in the game.
oh, cool.
So I'm really excited to be working with him. So it took us about 2 months to make the trailer, between recording footage, doing the script, doing the voiceover, and then editing it took like 2 weeks. So a lot of work went into that trailer and the rest of the page. And obviously, we were still working on the game at the same time. So we were splitting our time between working on this campaign and working on shipping updates for REVN. And then we finally went live with it April 8th.
So one concern or thing I'm curious about, you guys in the Indiegogo kind of mentioned you're going to have a premium store, right?
Yes.
How's that going to be balanced? Because I know when it comes to premium stores, like gamers and tend to freak out because of the fear of it becoming pay to win.
Yeah. I mean, we're all gamers ourselves, so we know exactly the concerns that you guys have. And the first thing I'll say is we're following a model that is very, very similar to League of Legends. We think that League of Legends has a very fair model that has worked for them for 10 years. And so we're doing something very similar. So you'll be able to get two currencies in the game, credits and shards. Shards are a premium currency, and so backing us on Indiegogo will give you a bunch of those. And then once the game goes live, you'll also be able to just purchase them as a microtransaction from our website or in-game. And the things that you can spend the currency on, there's going to be two main categories of things you're going to be buying in REVN. You're going to either be buying skins and cosmetics, or you're going to be buying abilities for your characters. The skins will be a premium thing. You'll be able to spend the shards, the premium currency, to change how your character looks, get different helmets and armor suits and things like that. The abilities you'll be able to purchase with either of our two currencies. The first, like I said, is the shards, which you can get as a premium currency by purchasing it for real currency, dollars and euros or whatever other currency your country uses. And then credits will be earned by playing the game. So every match that you play, you'll get some credits. Every time you level up your account, you'll get some credits. And you can also use those to unlock the abilities. So by just playing the game, you'll be able to unlock all of the gameplay content, all of the mechanics in the game. Or if you don't want to do that and you've got some extra cash and you just want to buy something right away, you can do that as well.
So will these abilities give players an unfair advantage or no?
So our abilities, the best way to think of them is like champions or heroes in other games. So REVN doesn't have character classes. You don't have character classes. You don't have specific legends or heroes that you choose to play as a specific character. Instead, your character has 3 ability slots, and you can put any ability that you want into any one of those slots. The only restriction being you can't have duplicates, and you have to own the ability. So right now we have like 30-something abilities in the game. You start with, I believe, 12 of them unlocked by default permanently. So everyone starts with the same 12. We're also doing a free weekly rotation where we'll be offering some abilities for anyone to try out for free without purchasing. And we're going to be balancing all of the abilities the same. So an ability that's a starter ability and an ability that you purchase should be equal. There should never be you get a better ability by purchasing it. With that said, there will always be abilities that are slightly stronger in specific scenarios than other abilities just because of the nature of an evolving meta for a MOBA where we're constantly releasing patches and adding new stuff and balancing things. So what we're hoping is that the abilities will all still be designed to be just as powerful as other ones. And so that way, no ability will really be better than another ability that someone paid for. The other thing that I want to say about that is we want to avoid a card advantage scenario where someone has purchased tons of abilities, so they have access to, say, they've bought every ability in the game right now. They have access to 30 abilities. They can only have 3 of them equipped at any time. And then you got a free-to-play player who just started, and they've got 12 abilities, right? Both of them, if they go to fight each other in the map, they can only have 3 abilities that they have access to. And they're all balanced around the same mana cost, the same damage, or whatever. They just might look different or have slightly different uses, where maybe one's better as an AoE, the other one's a direct damage or a skill shot. The other thing we want to avoid is having the players go in and, well, this guy's got 30 abilities to choose from, and this guy's got 12. So we added the loadout system, where your loadout has 6 abilities in it, and that's what you're able to choose from during a specific game. So it's sort of like building your own class of, this is my deck of 6 abilities, and I'm going to bring this into this match, and I'll be choosing 3 of those to use. And then I've got 3 backups as alternates that I could switch to if I go back to my spawn area. And so everyone has 6 when they're in the match. Everyone's on the same playing field. You've got 6 abilities to choose from. 3 can be equipped. It's just that when you're outside of the game in the main menu, the things you're able to put into the loadouts, you'll have more if you've been playing longer or if you're spending money on the game.
So we are down to our final question. You ready?
All right. Yeah, let's go.
What lessons through this whole game development process, through your journey of life, if you would, have you learned? What lessons have you learned?
What lessons have I learned? What life lessons have I learned from game dev? Wow. It is incredibly humbling. It is an insane journey to go on. You'll make so many mistakes, so you have to learn to live with your mistakes. You have to learn that failure is okay. You have to learn that when something doesn't work, that this is an opportunity for you to make it better. That's probably one of the biggest things I've learned. I've learned so much about just staying organized and being disciplined. I've learned about teamwork and just how important it is to have people that you work with and listening to them and communicating with them. Wow. I think you asked me for like my biggest lesson, and I just listed 7. The biggest one is learning that failure is okay. Failing to do something correctly the first time does not mean that you can't do it better the next time.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you for joining me.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for having me on here.
So where can people find you, check out your game, check you out?
So if you're looking to find out about our game, I'd ask you to go check out our Indiegogo page. You can just go to indiegogo.com and search for REVN. It'll show up. It probably shows up first if you even search for REVN Indiegogo on Google. So go check that out. We've got a reveal trailer, so you can learn about the game from that. The awesome voiceover, like we mentioned. And then there's some more information on that page about the game. And if you're really interested in supporting us, you can purchase a Founders Pack and get some really cool stuff for the game. We also have a website. We have a Discord server, which is where I practically live. We think of the Discord server as like our office, plus it's like a community lounge. So whenever I'm working on the game, I'm hanging out in Discord. If we're playing the game, we're in Discord. We're just always on there. We're on Twitter at REVN Game. Our studio is also on Twitter and Instagram at Ambitious Devs. And myself, you can follow me on Twitter at Silas_Talley if you want to hear about the flavors of coffee I'm drinking and whatever I'm watching on Netflix.
And this has been Nano's Indie Cafe, where we discuss and promote indie games. If your own indie game project, feel free to talk about it. And we do the show live Wednesday through Friday around 2-3 p.m. MST, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.